Hey guys, Icy Cat here. Today we're covering the new Season 4 defensive operator, Echo. In this operator profile, we'll learn all about how his special ability works, what kind of weapons he has, and the best ways to use them. Echo is the newest defensive operator in Season 4 for the Japanese SAT counterterrorism unit. He's a 3 armor rating but a 1 on speed, so he's going to be heavy and slow, but he can take an extra couple of hits. Echo's intended to be more of an objective defender as opposed to a roaming defender. And let's take a look at his loadout to see what he brings to the table. His first primary option will be the Benelli Supernova 12-gauge pump shotgun. It has moderate damage at 32 with 7 shell capacity, but where this thing really excels is in environmental destruction. The pump shotguns in this game have been given a little bit more of the ability to shred the environment around it, so when you're taking out chunks and walls, the pump actions tend to do a little bit better job than the semi-autos. The real downfall with it though is that you have to wait a little bit more in between each shot as you have to cycle the pump action before you can shoot again. His other primary weapon option is the MP5SD. This has an integral or built-in silencer, you can't take it off. It has pretty low damage at 23. This puts it on par damage-wise with the P90 with standard mobility and a magazine count of 30 plus 1 in the chamber. Not a hard-hitting weapon, but it is fairly accurate. And worth noting that it's a Defender SMG capable of taking an ACOG scope. Next up is the P229. This is a little bit more of a heavy hitter. It comes in at damage of 50, standard ratings all around with a 12-round magazine. His other secondary choice will be the Bearing 9 submachine gun. This has a little bit less damage at 32, but its fire rate is 1100. With average mobility and a magazine size of 25, it's really hard to go wrong. The Bearing 9 makes an especially good companion to the pump-action Supernova shotgun. You can use one to make murder holes, and the other one to shoot out with more accuracy at longer distance. But it doesn't make a bad backup for the MP5 either. Choice of secondary gadgets are built around his platform of being an objective defender, so you can take either a deployable shield or barbed wire, and both are pretty viable. I'm going to give the edge to the deployable shield. Simply because of the way Echo is intended to be used, he's going to be on his drone frequently, and if he has some cover to hide behind while he's doing his job, then that's just going to help him out, and the deployable shield will give him that cover. So now let's talk about his special ability. Well, what is that? He's the first defender that can throw out a mobile drone system just like the attackers can do. But it has some pretty key differences, and one of them is that it can invert and stick to the ceiling and get an eye on things going around down below it. It will also camouflage itself, and you can see that if you look at the edges of the screen where they're kind of jagged, that's the camera actually looking through the optical camouflage, and it's causing refractions on the lens. You don't have that effect when it's down on the ground, but you do when it's planted up on the ceiling. You can access your drone view at any time by pressing the gadget activation key again, or you can go into it through the camera feed. You can cycle through your different feeds and it'll show up as the red dot here in the rotation, and you can resume control at any time and move it again if you want that way too. So how visible is the drone? Well, let's take a look. Here it is on the floor. You can see it's pretty visible while it's there. As soon as it flips up and inverts though, it's going to go invisible after a second or so, and then you'll see how easy it is to blend into its environment. The optical camouflage does have a little bit of pulsing, which can give it away depending on the complexity of the background underneath it. But really, unless you know exactly where to look, this thing is very, very easy to miss. When it fires out its sound pulse, it does become visible again very briefly before resuming its camouflage state again. It does have its limitations on what it can stick to though. If there's any kind of cross brace or something on the ceiling that isn't completely flat, it won't stick. Likewise, it has a height limitation as well. It'll only go up so high, and then if it doesn't find something to stick to, it'll come back down again. This can be useful for scouting up high and then dropping down quickly if that's your intent. And this is what I was talking about. You can use this to just peek up into an area and fall back down and scout. And then we can come over here like we've got a breached open trapdoor, come up, take a peek, drop back down. As long as your height difference is such that you won't affix to a surface when you do it, you'll rapidly go up for a peek and drop back down again. Remember, you are visible when you do it. You are not camouflaged. The Sonic Blast does have a range limitation. You can see here we're actually at the outer edge of it. So I'm shooting right here at the target, and he is not being disoriented by the sound blast. He's simply too far away. But let's drop down and get a little bit closer. We're just going to move up a bit, and we can see that we do get a successful disorientation on this one. Now we're going to test the duration of the drone's Sonic Blast effect. So you can hit yourself here, and that's how we're going to test it. As soon as we hit the effect, I've started my timer, and we're just going to keep this going. As you move around, you've got about 18 seconds of disorientation. Now that's with constant movement. So I've put this in my editor and I've actually spliced it to the frame of when the effect begins and the final frame of when the effect ends, and it clocks in right around 18 to 19 seconds depending if you're walking or running. Now if you're standing still, you actually get a different effect. It lasts for much less time, almost half. It stops at 10 seconds, so that's if you're not moving. Obviously you're not going to freeze where you're standing though if you get hit by the thing, but if you just kind of run out to the side and get out of the line of fire and then stop, so you might come in at like 14 seconds instead of 18 because you took a few seconds to get out of the way first for the full 10 seconds to wear off. We did test, and stance change seems to have no effect on that. If you're prone or crouched, it doesn't seem to change anything. So if you're prone or crouched, it doesn't really seem to change anything in relation to the time. And the armor rating of your character also seems to be irrelevant. Light operators, heavy operators, medium, they both seem to have the same kind of effects for time duration. But does it last any longer if you hit him in the head? When you aim at the head, you get a red targeting reticle. So we gave this a try. And no, we're going to come in at the same time. If you're not moving, you're still going to come in at 10 seconds. So you don't have any additional vulnerability for being hit in that specific spot. Testing reveals, though, that where you get hit does matter in that most of the body is not actually a valid target area. So here we're going to check the area where we're hitting splash damage at the feet, like this would be a near miss. Nothing. Now we're going to try the foot. That's actually on the foot and there's no disorientation. Knee, nothing there. So now we're going to check the shield operator's upper region where it's exposed on the arm. Now that will score a disorientation hit. The upper thigh, likewise, does not seem to register a hit. Now this one surprised me. I thought for sure that a groin shot would give us some kind of disorientation effect. Nothing there. It seems to be stomach level or higher will register as a disorientation effect. Anything below that won't register. But what if you're behind a shield for coverage? He walks in fully extended and he receives the disorientation effect, but it also makes him put away his shield. We tested that again. I'm fully extended on my shield. As soon as I'm hit, the animation cancels and the shield retracts. And this does indeed work with any kind of animation, whether you're planning a breaching charge or here we're setting a diffuser off. If you get hit with that while you're in the middle of an animation sequence, it will cancel the sequence and cause you to have to start over once you're cleared. So this is a really effective way of stopping an operator from attempting to do something. Now, while a near miss at the floor didn't seem to do anything, if you get close to the upper body, so because the feet didn't register as anything the upper body does, a near miss on a wall, if it's very close, will result in a disorientation. And here we can see what it looks like on the receiving end. They hit the wall right next to me instead of targeting my head, and I still got stunned. The area of effect doesn't really translate out further than a single target though, so here I was standing directly behind the operator. I was actually touching that operator. When he was hit in the head, it only affected him and not me. Next up, we tried the effect on drones to see if it would in any way disrupt the camera feed. And it really doesn't. It doesn't do anything. You don't get any kind of distortion. You don't even destroy the device. In fact, this is going to apply by and large for any gadget. It doesn't cause damage to players, so it isn't going to damage any of the operator's gadgets either. Drones, breaching charges, nothing like that. They still work as intended. Nothing has changed by hitting it. Next, we decided to test and see if you could signal jam them since you can block other kinds of drones, but the drone is apparently shielded from any kind of signal jamming. Since most team gadgets don't harmfully interact with other gadgets, that's not entirely unexpected, although there are some exceptions to that rule, and in this case, it still holds true. The drone does have some limitations when going outside. You have a 3-second countdown to when you lose signal. Once you do, it's like you have been signal jammed at that point. You kind of like lose wireless signal, you've gone out too far or something like that. Now at that point, you cannot retrieve your drone unless you physically go outside and get it back again. And that's something you can do. If you go out there, you can pick it back up and then bring it back inside again and redeploy it. It's not damaged or anything. It's just that you can no longer remotely pilot it because you've lost your signal connection. You can bring it back in and try again. One effective way to use this is that you can kind of scoot it outside though, and we'll see this here as we take a look. So if you're going to take a peek outside, just real quick, go out there, see what you need to see, and then slide back in again before you get that 3-second signal loss. The low profile of the drone is such that it fits into pretty much any area where a standard drone can fit. You can go through the drone vents just like the attacker can. You can also slide underneath doors and things like that. Again, if you're going outside, make sure you get back in. But all internal drone vents or going under doors are not blocked by the use of this at all. Echo's drone is similar to the attacker drones in other ways too. The speed is pretty much right on the money. Here we're going to do a little bit of a race and see if either one of them is faster. And we never lose pace. We're always keeping a consistent distance behind. So its on-the-ground travel speed is the same. Now, the drones can get tangled on each other. If you get into a tight space and you each run into one another, you will get stuck in that space. You can't like pass through each other's drone. And in the case of a Twitch drone, that can be a very bad thing. So how do you counter an Echo drone? Well, IQ is going to be the best way to do that. Using her detector, it'll show up just like any other electronic device, and she'll be able to see it even when it's invisible. She'll see the signal, and that will allow you to get its position. When it's moving, it really stands out. Just be sure to not confuse it for one of the attacker drones, as it looks very similar in profile when you're seeing it through a wall. The drone can be affected by Thatcher's EMP grenades. However, it behaves more like Pulse's scanner. When that's hit, it's a temporary effect. Same thing with the drone. You will actually knock it down if it's up high. It will lose power, it will become uncamouflaged, it will become invisible again, but a direct strike with an EMP will not destroy this gadget, even though it can destroy other kinds of electronic gadgets. On a standard ceiling, you can even impact it on the floor, and it should reach up. Again, this is a standard ceiling. Very high ceilings may not have the same effect, but it'll still drop down and be rendered ineffective from that. Overall, the effect lasts for about 10 seconds. The effect on detonation is very similar to a camera that's been hit by a signal jammer. Echo can combo really well with anybody, but the ideal team composition is going to be at least one other person for objective defense. That way, when Echo is using his drone, he doesn't have to worry about being exposed. He can be behind cover, but if he's the only one in the room and it gets stormed, he might not be aware and see it coming, so have somebody buddy up with you when you're in the objective doing this. He's really effective to assist the other roamers, so if you have a couple of roamers on your team, he can really help flush people out for them. Alternatively, you can keep the drone closer to the objective itself, and then when the attacking team makes their push onto the objective, he can slow that down and kind of get in the way of things. Due to his heavy speed, he's not going to really be any kind of an effective roamer, and that's not to say you can't. You can technically roam with anybody, but it's not what he's really designed for. His shotgun is a little too up close and personal for that, and his submachine gun doesn't have the best damage to work with. So really, you're going to be all about trying to make your engagements happen in and around the objective for him. When that's not happening, you're using your drone to assist the team by denying pushes or flushing people out in other areas. One interesting thing to note is that you cannot tag with this camera. You can only view things passively, so you're going to use your mic to do a lot of callouts. This really makes Echo a solid support character. Use your mic, let the team know what's happening and what you see because you cannot tag with it. Well, that wraps up the operator profile for Echo. Yesterday, we took a look at Hibana's operator profile. Also, be sure to take a look at the map walkthrough series we've been doing for Skyscraper. That's going to be broken up into a few parts rather than one big video like previous map walkthroughs have been. I'll also be covering the Elite operator uniforms as well as any other premium content. So if you want to stay up to date on the latest news, tips, tricks, reviews, walkthroughs, and more for Rainbow Six Siege, please like and subscribe. You can also follow me over at IcyCat25 on either Facebook or Twitter. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.